Oh, wait. Got it.
Okay, okay. We'll cut that part out. All right. Hey there, welcome to OnSet. I am Daniel Norton, and we are live in New York City. Live streams, you gotta love the... But anyways, we're doing something a little different because I want to talk a little bit about posing in this video. A little bit about it. It's gonna only be about that. And so you're actually looking through the camera that I'm going to look through while we work with our subject. We'll talk about posing a little bit more, the philosophy of it. If you're looking for the 1975 pose book, you're not gonna get that from me, but we're gonna talk about how you might pose, what it means, how we can use it with the light and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm gonna come over to this camera now. I think. I can't tell what camera we're on. I'm good. And announcing for the first time here at, well, it's not really the first time.
Yeah.
For a repeat performance, Sharina. All right. Yeah, a little dance for you.
Yeah, a little dance.
All right, so it feels so weird not having the laptop open. This might be the first time we've ever done a live stream where I wasn't plugged into Capture One. So like I said, we're trying something new. We're looking through the camera. That's what this little box on top, because people are gonna ask me that. This is a HDMI transmitter. And what it's gonna allow us to do is basically look through my stills camera so that we can kind of see exactly what we're talking about here. Now, one thing that's really important, and one reason why I set up the lights, you see I have some lights set up, even though it's a very rudimentary basic lighting setup, is that I believe, I'm gonna make a statement, because I believe that posing there's no generic pose that works for everything. You need to consider the outfit, the environment, and the light. That's gonna make all the difference in the world. If somebody thinks that this pose is really great, but the light's coming from here, they're gonna have a big old shadow on their face, right? So you need to know that as a photographer. We have to be aware, and we have to let our subject be aware of the light and how it works with them so that they can actually achieve the best pose possible for them. And what we're ultimately looking to do is showcase kind of what, this is super obvious, what they look like, hold on, whoa, right? And also, to the best advantage, right? We want to consider things like angles to the camera, and those kind of things to create basically what is the most flattering image for a person, all things considered. Communication is really important. If everybody, if you're like me, I don't know if you're like me or not, but I shoot a lot of selfies. I'm constantly walking around with my phone. I'm like shooting selfies.
Are you talking about me or you?
No. Yeah, it's me. So, and when you shoot a selfie, right? What's the trick to shooting a selfie? You got to hold it up, right? It's all about holding it up, and that's because the light's coming from above, right? So we got the light coming down. We're holding this up. It's creating an angle, right? Making the face prominent. This is the same thing, right? No matter what you're doing, you want to consider that. So if you have somebody in front of your camera who's used to making selfies and your camera is here and they start doing this, that's not going to look very good. So we have to communicate. We have to work with the light that's there. So in this case, I'm going to the light is important always, but I'll just kind of gloss over what it is a little bit because it's not super relevant. You could be using whatever. This happens to be a data light Panara. Yes, it is the most expensive light in the world. But hey, you know what? That's how I roll. That's how Daniel rolls. Now, this is a big old soft light. That's right, exactly. A big old giant softbox from the side, creating a nice kind of wraparound light that's going to give us nice even light around our subject for the full body, because I know people love, oh, Daniel, why do you shoot everything so close? We're going to go like nice full length, or at least 3/4 in most of this. And yes, you can come a little closer. A little bit more. Okay, so now, number one, what we want to consider is position of our camera, right? Again, all this is important. If I'm shooting somebody full length, typically I want to place my camera right around waist high to them. This is so that they, you might hear, or people might say, if you shoot up at somebody, they'll look really tall, or if you shoot down at somebody, they'll look really, really short, right? Or they'll look more diminished. So what we want to do is create, an accurate representation. So we want to put our camera somewhat in the middle, about waist high. If I'm shooting full length, I would turn my camera vertically, and then I would get her feet in the shot. But if I do that, you guys will have to go like this with your head. So you're going to have to live with the sides right now, right? So this is going to create a nice basic angle for us on Sharina. Now, if we place somebody standing directly flat onto the camera, that's typically not going to be the most flattering pose for most people because it's just going to be flat, right? Dimension is what draws people in. It also allows the light to wrap around. So almost always, we're going to want to have the person turn their body towards the light in some fashion, or away, but we'll go towards the light, I think, in this case. So if she turns her body towards the light a little bit, you will see immediately how that creates a nicer shape, right? Then we want to maybe introduce a little bit of shape to the body and curve, so we could, being that she's a female, she could then turn her shoulders more towards us. So if she does that, she's going to immediately start to create a nice shape. We can see where her body starts and ends. Because of what she's wearing and because the background is white, we can see everything. If she was wearing like long sleeves and it was a dark background, we'd have to be very wary about where her arms fall, right? Because if you're wearing a long sleeve shirt and you're against a dark background, you might not be able to see where the person starts and ends, and that can make people look bigger than they are. And most people don't want to look bigger than they are, unless they're bodybuilders, and they probably want to look really big. You know, so we want like a little bit of shape, right? So we're going to turn towards the light. This is going to be, you know, give us nice coverage, and we turn the shoulders towards the camera. And then we've got two options with the shoulders, right? I mean, you have so many options, but generally speaking, if we bring the shoulders back, that's going to narrow the shoulders. It's going to raise the chest up high. It's going to make the whole body more kind of structured. Or we can do the classic fashion where they're like the droopy shoulder, or Richard Avedon if you love the Richard Avedon thing. Depending on what you're doing, you know, you could use either one of those things. Typically, for a nice strong pose, we want to have the shoulders back, right? So we're going to have the shoulders back. We're going to have the body turned slightly. This is going to give us nice structure, nice posture. If the person is like, oh God, this feels so uncomfortable, yeah. Because most people aren't standing the way that they should be standing in a picture, right? We're always slouched over, especially me. I'm the total slouch. So we want to have our shoulders back. We want to be strong. And then we're going to have, you know, we're going to work the body. Now, we're starting from the feet down, right? We started with the feet. We're talking about turning the body. We're talking about turning the shoulders. Then we get up to the head. We want to make sure, right? This is important, right? Serena knows this. We want to make sure that we're projecting our face forward, right? We want to project the chin. Because people always suck their chin back. I don't know why.
I do it.
Yeah, maybe it's because they're afraid.
Explain the camera settings.
Oh yeah, I'm going to explain the camera settings. Hold on. Let me, before I get too far, I got so excited.
You did.
I was on a roll. Oh, I'm getting a phone call. I won't take that.
Now.
I just got a phone call on my watch. That's like sci-fi. All right, so remember that time Cliff called? And then I put him on speaker? Anyways. All right, so right now I am set at, again, I'm lighting for the light in the room. So I'm at 400 ISO, f4, 125. Why did I choose these settings? Because the lens is an f4 lens. This is as fast as I can shoot. I know she's going to be moving around a little bit, even though I'm on a tripod, so I don't like to go slower than about 1/125. I mean, we're at 28 millimeters, so in theory, I could shoot it like a 30th or something, but again, if I wanted to move and have action, 125 will stop most basic action. So then I just had to choose my ISO that gave me a proper exposure, and in this case, it is 400 ISO, and with this camera, that's totally fine. I know that with flash, I generally say to go as low as possible with the ISO. That's because we're trying to eliminate the light in the space. Here, we're not really doing that, right? Actually, we can probably, I don't know if this is going to totally screw it up. If I turn these lights off, is that going to throw up all our exposures? Right? We can see that she's primarily being lit by the data light. The light in the space is really, you know, not much, right? The data light's what's giving us all our light. Should I leave that on or off? Does it matter? All right, we'll leave it off. This is where we can really see the light. Now we can see too by the way she's lit, right? How we're lighting her somewhat sideways. Remember that a lot of times when I'm shooting a beauty shot, we talk about this a lot, I often, especially with a female subject, I place the light in the center. But if we light somebody from the center when we're trying to take a full-length shot, what we're going to lose is that dimension. We can look at Serena and see that she's got a light on one side and it wraps around to shadow, so we can use that to showcase the shape of her body, right? You can do it with shadow like here, or we could do it with highlight if we used a kicker or a background light. So now we've got some shape. She looks good. She's doing the thing that people do, right? Which is very nice, right? What's kind of important too when you're posing somebody is they should generally fall the way they're going to fall, and then you want to move them within that, right? So what I usually do is people will always be uncomfortable, not Trina because we've done this a million times, but you know, they're going to think they need to do this pose and they're going to be like, oh, I'm doing a pose. You want to get them out of that, right? You just kind of, you can either just shoot through it, which is one technique, so just shoot it because you don't want them to feel like they're doing something wrong. So it's like, oh, yeah, and then give it a second, wait a second, let them fall into a natural pose, and then you can look and say, okay, that's good, but let's make these adjustments. Like I could say, that's really good, but maybe bring your shoulders back, right? And then that way she's within a pose that she already feels comfortable, and yet we're able to create or achieve something that's maybe a little bit, you know, more flattering. So it's all about angles, right? And the other thing we don't want to do when we're posing somebody, or we want to avoid, is we want to avoid like smushing the body, unless that's something specific you're working to do. And what I mean by that is People generally putting the hands flat against themselves, their arms smushed against them is usually not a good thing. You want to float the limbs.
Float the limbs.
Float them, right? Float the
Get that on a
limbs.
shirt.
Yeah, float the limbs. That's the next shirt we could go. Right, but you want to feel like they're being like lifted, right? So like we don't want the arms to be like this. We want them to kind of come off the body like that. It shows shape to the body. Also, it won't cause the arms to be flattened, which will generally make them look bigger, which we don't necessarily want unless we're a bodybuilder, right? And yeah, so overall, what do you think so far? Does that make sense? Sharina knows all this. She's yes, Sharina knows all about this, right? And then what we want to do is, again, we're going to use the light and the shadow to shape the body, right? So we're going to do exactly like I said. We're going to come in here, and we could actually even I'll make a photo, just because we can. Boom. And I'm going to try to look at it. This is experimental here, guys. We're going to see. Okay. I'm looking at it on the back of the screen. Would you like to see it?
Yes.
Well, come on. We can take a look.
I'm that model.
Yeah, there you go. She looks good, right? She looks powerful. She's like, no, I don't, because my face is not turned enough to the side. Right, but we can see how she's structured and she's strong, right? But yet she feels somewhat natural, right? Okay. We're going to loosen up. We're going to come. We're going to do it. And then we're going to boom, right? And then we can see that now what she's done is she's given a little bit of tilt, which is very nice. The face is kind of projected so that even though she's looking somewhat down at me, it still looks nice with the shadow and everything there, right? We can see that. That's working, right? Okay, good. Any questions, thoughts, concerns so far? Am I talking really fast? Why am I using the f4 lens instead of something else? Well, I mean, in particular for this, I am using this lens because this is going to give me the coverage that I need to show you for a video. If I was actually shooting this subject, I wouldn't frame it like this, but if I do that, because I guess maybe it's unclear, here, I will quickly show you what will happen if I frame it the way that I would frame it. Everybody's about to get sick, right? If I went sideways and I zoomed in, right, to give what would be a better shot. Yeah, we can see that, you know, clearly for the purpose of the video, that's not really going to work for us, right? For a still photo, though, we can see the difference, okay? Maybe that's helpful. See? Vertical. I mean, I just did it quickly, but you get the general idea, right?
Yeah,
we see the shape.
Do shoot like that.
Yeah, that's usually, yeah, believe it or not. Is that better? Why am I shooting with a constant light? I'm shooting, primarily my setup here is because we're doing a video to show you. Why would you shoot with the constant light? Sometimes people feel more comfortable because they don't have the flash firing. You know, that can be nice. You can see exactly what you're getting, which is really nice with the constant light. If you're also shooting film at the same time, film meaning motion, constant light obviously is good. There's a different feel when you're using the constant light. I mean, would I recommend that if we were just making portraits? I would probably lean towards the flash, usually. But again, for this particular setup, this is the ideal thing. There's no perfect tool, right? Everything is good for some stuff and not good for other things, so we're using what we have to accomplish what we want to do here. The point of this shoot is to show you guys posing, so in order to do that, the best way for me to do that is with this light so you can see it. Right, if that makes sense. Now, we can create more drama and interest in our shot by using shadow. So let's actually do this. This is where we might, this is where it could get crazy. So I'm going to move the light around. And if the exposure starts to get all over the place, then we'll just adjust it. So if I were to move the light, let's say, to the side of Sharina.
Oh, this is getting crazy.
Yeah, we're getting a little crazy, right? Now, what we've got is a lot of shadow, right? We can still work, obviously I know it's in the shot, but I'm trying to show you all. We can still work, I'll zoom in a little bit. We can still work slightly towards the light. And what we immediately notice here is that by adding this additional shadow, we're going to, I'm gonna make a quick adjustment to my exposure. Yeah, you're good. I'm just gonna adjust my shutter speed so I'm always the same. There we go. We can see here now that we're really noticing the shape of her, right? We can really use this to create shape and form on our subject. And that's because now the light's there. Now, if she wasn't aware of the light, right? If we weren't talking about this and whatever, and she started working the other way, right? What we're gonna find is that this creates a completely different look. Now, whether or not that works for you is kind of, depends on your subject and what's going on. You could work away from the light, but now we're losing a lot of detail in the front, right? So we're not seeing the beauty of the dress. She's not going to be able to show it very well. And even if she goes perfectly straight on to us, that's going to be very shadowy across her face, right? So we want to work ourselves towards the light in almost every case. This is just going to give us a better place to start. You don't always have to look towards the light, but looking towards the light is a good place to start. If that makes it towards the light. Yeah, with the body. There you go. Right? And then twist the shoulders back, and then she's floating the arms, and she's projecting the neck, and then we'll take a photo and we'll show you. Boom, right? We can see that this now creates a nice dramatic image. We can see tone and texture in the body, and the shadow is not so overwhelming that it's distracting, right? It's not so dark because this is a big old soft light. Questions? Thoughts? Concerns? Nothing. Okay. Okay, well, we're cranking. I am talking really fast today. If I'm talking too fast, let me know.
What if I'm dancing?
Yeah, what if she's dancing? Right, so what if she is going to move around, right? If she wants to move around and do things. If we're going to do that, like, so this is a good thing. If we're going to work somebody, let's say we have somebody who has something that they do. They're a dancer, or there's certain things they fall into. We can also light to the pose, right? We can think about this and say, oh, okay, we want to show this kind of movement, so we're going to use our light to that way. Okay, come closer to me. Right? So then turn towards the light again. Now we can see that we're actually got the light coming from the back. So if she comes up and gives form, right, we're going to see how this light kind of wraps around and is creating even more form and shadow on the dress. See, when it comes this way, we've got this great form. We can roll this back. You can stay where you were. There we go. Yep.
Metering mode and why?
You're well?
Metering mode and why?
Metering mode. I just have it in matrix. I always leave it in matrix metering whenever I can because it does a good job. I mean, why not? I get that there's all these different modes in your camera, but Nikon's matrix metering is very, very good. So I don't really see a reason to switch to spot or whatever unless you really have a problem getting the proper exposure. All right, so we're really going to work the shadow. Because again, if I'm talking about moving towards the light, right, now we're starting to get even more shape, right? We can see, but if she goes perfectly flat to me, we see that that's nothing, right? But if she starts to twist towards the light again, we can start to pick up that shape. And you see we can really accentuate the leg, the back, and then we just have to move that shoulder, and we've got like a lot of light here. Now, if you're doing a full-length shot like this is fine. If you want more kind of softer light on her face, we could bring a secondary light in on her face as well, or a reflector. I mean, there's lots of different ways you can do this. But this now is going to create, again, an even more kind of moody. And we're not changing much, right? This really comes down to, but we can see how the light is affecting our shot. The light is going to be king. It's the most important thing is where we place the light into this pose. All right. And for that matter, let's actually add a second light. Why not? We're gonna bring a hard light in, and we're gonna look at what a hard light will do. And actually, let me bring this one back where it was, and we're gonna. Now, what's kind of cool is, and honestly, guys, for the metering right now, I'm not really using the light meter in the camera. I'm just looking at it because we're basically you can almost consider this like a video mode, because I'm really just trying to show what this looks like. So we can come up here with this light. I'm gonna dial this down a little bit. So I'm gonna knock it down to half power, which is gonna drop a stop off of it. So we've got this kind of moodier light, and then I'm gonna actually bring in this hard light from the back, and we're gonna really accentuate the form. Here, so we can show the difference between having, yeah, exactly. All right, so. Let me turn this guy up. Oop, that's the color. Alrighty. So because I'm using a constant light, I can just kind of eyeball it, and I'm just looking to try to match the exposure. I don't want it to be super, super bright coming from the back, but I want it to be a little bit on the bright side. And now we've actually got two different lights that we can work with, and we can see that because we have this backlight, see how that cuts on what would be her right side. So now we can really see that line where it falls. Oh God.
Very startling.
It is, right?
His dress and I
Yeah, yeah. So again, guys, try to imagine this stuff, not the two sides. I know it's hard to get all that, but if I put it sideways, it will be terrible. But yeah, now we've got this here. I'll take a still and we'll look at it. We can see now, again, that's going to give us the ability to really, really shape the body. And we want to work with that because, again, if we don't, if we take it and we just have her be flat, actually work towards this light, work into the highlight. Yeah. This is not going to be as strong because we can see that because of the nature of how her body is shaped, right, we're going to see straight lines on that side, which is fine. It cuts her out, but it doesn't have that same effect. That hard light is all about showing the shape of her, and the shape of her is really when she turns towards the main light and we see that kind of silhouette. We don't want her working into that hard line, just putting a line down her leg, which isn't really that interesting, right? So this is much, much better. And we can do almost a profile, and we've really got, right, the arms are floating. Yep, but then bring the shoulders back a bit. And we can really work that. Bring the shoulder back like that. Boom, there we go. And right, and then there you go. Nice and simple, showing the shape, the curves, really easy, right? Towards the light, using it to cut her out, making that shape. So far, so good. We are flying. We are flying. We are super flying. What's that?
It's touchscreen.
It is a touchscreen. Oh yeah, we're all times there. All right, so that's kind of nice too. Again, letting the person, so the trick here we're going to learn is Daniel goes and drinks coffee, and when he comes back, the person is almost always standing in a better place than, you know.
Really?
Yeah, that's the coffee trick. But yes, I like what you did there. You kind of just like naturally.
You said something about shooting female features with an overhead light. Can you discuss this or show it? I'm guessing the symmetrical light. I'm guessing was the same.
Oh, like an overhead light? Yeah, I mean, typically when I'm shooting a female, right, so if you know, the common way to shoot a portrait, or that I like to shoot a portrait of females, is generally with the light more in the center, kind of more in the front and center. You see us do that a lot. That's like a butterfly light. That doesn't necessarily accentuate the figure, and this is actually what's really interesting, right? If I'm shooting a beauty shot, that's a much different situation than when I'm shooting a, you were doing something nice, so I took a picture. See, I did that?
I saw you.
Yeah. I'm pretty slick. I'm pretty slick. See that?
Are you though? Because I knew.
Well, it doesn't matter. I am slick. Okay. Right? So there it is, right? She got a little bit of a hot spot on her arm, but see how she just naturally fell into something very nice? This is what we want to wait for. We want to look for those moments and capture them when they're there. And then we can work it. Like, I see that, and it's really nice, and now the light's on her arm, so this is even better, right? Yeah, and bring your arms forward like that again. We get that little bit of hip width there. We get the head, bring it this way slightly. There we go. And out, and boom. Yeah, well, you were moving your arm. She was doing this at the time when I took the picture. My timing was off, but you know. But the idea here is that we're moving around. The other thing that I typically want to be aware of, and I'll talk about the other thing in a second, is that, as it comes to this, is that we want to think about eye lines and where people are looking. That's super important. So a lot of times they can obviously look at the lens, but if we want them looking off, then people should generally look in the direction that their face is facing, if that makes sense. Because if your nose is this way, this is the way you should be looking. And when you turn your head, because a lot of times people will turn their face and then look back out of the corner of their eyes, which generally doesn't look good. Yeah. So, if somebody's looking off anyways, to have them look back at the camera, unless you're going for something really kind of sneaky, is generally just not good. So what we want to do is, like, if she's looking over here with her whole face, her eyes are there. And we can see how, I can't zoom in this way. We can see how that looks much more natural if you look where your eyes are versus here, right? And an easy thing to do is if you've got them if they're there, you can just be like, look here, and then you can just move your, boom, right there, and then you just lock it in. And then we've got nice eye position, which is important. We want to basically have them looking in a way that looks more natural, because again, you don't want that creepy corner eye thing, unless you're going for that.
What's the creepy corner eye thing? Is it like
Well, yeah, like that. Yeah, there you go. Hold on to right. I mean, that's fine if that's what you're going for. But generally speaking, this is not what we want. Yeah, I mean, by the way, that's how Sharina usually looks. That's a, yeah, I mean, it just, and I know I've seen people talk about, like, well, you have to show so much percentage of the white of the. It's not that. It's just that people looking out of the corner of their eye, psychologically, that's not a good thing, right? When somebody side eyes you, you don't want that, right? So we typically don't want that in our photo because it's psychologically not something we want. So we want them looking where they're looking. So Okay, good. Right. So this is a good place to go. So, working through a pose. Now, this is kind of the next level stuff. So we have the basics down, and what I generally do, shooting programs many years ago, that maybe we talked about this, but usually if somebody's new, I will kind of work through the things I just described. I know that sometimes people feel like they got to get to the shoot and get the pictures, but having a little bit of a conversation makes a big difference. Talking about bending the arms, talking about the neck, talking about turning the body, because when you tell them that all up front, then it becomes easier to direct them because they remember that what I said, when I go shoulders back, they know what that means because we've already done it, right? So we want to walk through that. Then we can do things like walking through a pose. Like if we want her to move around, we can give her like a little bit of direction. Like, okay, let's say you want to move your hands, up and down or put them on your hips, do that. You can have her move around a little bit and all you want to do is just let them know that's what they got to do. Like typically what I'll do is I'll say, let's take a really obvious one. And say, okay, so go ahead and like kind of fix your hair, right? So we can do that, right? And then what we want to do is watch her do it. I mean, you can take some pictures too, but then we want to find the part of it that's good and then work that, right? Because not every part of that is going to be what we want. We want to see what part of it works, and then we want to go, oh yeah, it was really nice when you did this. And then we just get her to do it a few times, and that's how we're going to nail down that particular thing. You don't want these actions to be big. If they're big, the chance of repeating it over and over again is going to be much more slim, right? I'm just going to come up so I can see you better. So if the action is relatively small, then she can repeat it. So we want to create smaller actions, and we want to just create small things where somebody's moving within things. Turn towards the back and then turn towards me, that kind of thing, right? And then you can say, and then just turn towards me, and then we see what works, right? Bring your shoulders around this way, bring your hands up. Yeah, that's it. Okay, kind of drop them back down. Oh, maybe they look good with your shoulders back. Oh, fix your hair. And you just kind of talk through different ideas. If they're really far away from you, sometimes you can give a whole thing, right? You can be like, all right, well, I'm using my 200 millimeter lens because it's really expensive and I had to buy it and show off how much money I have. So you're standing way over there. So instead of me yelling at you, I'm going to say, walk over there and do this certain thing, right? And then they can repeat it. What we want to do is have pose, oh, that's really nice. See what you just did there? See, and that's what you do. You watch, always keep an eye on the person, see what they do. When she kind of was looking down, just seeing where her feet was, it was kind of really nice. But we can work that, right? That looked good, but do that again. Yeah, but then turn your face more this way, and then up a little bit, right? Like this. And now that looks really pretty, the way the light fell on her face, right? And I can see that. We're watching the person, we're seeing what they do naturally, we're kind of working within their natural, I mean, Sharina just has such natural grace.
And a round face.
And a round face, she does have a round face.
That you told me on the first date.
Yes, I did. She remembers that.
And then I look at you like this.
That's right. And then she looks that way. She likes that. Boom. Right? And that's how we get rid of the round face. She looked out of the corner of her eye. She was like, I have a round face? What are you talking about? Right. So, if somebody has that's my classic lit from the back shot, right? Right. You want, and I mean, she makes fun of me for doing that, but I always point things out. I think it's important when you're working with somebody to kind of, I probably said, I really like that you have such a round face. It's very youthful. You have a very youthful look about you.
But it actually helped me a lot, just as an actor, and being able to, now I know what my face needs, because you explain light to my face. So.
Right, understanding what each person, because remember, that's the thing. This is the thing that I joke about, but it is really a serious thing, is that you look at all these like posing guides that people make, and unless it's made for the person that's in front of you in that exact situation, it's not going to be very good, because everybody's different, right? You can get general ideas, keeping angles, floating the body, twisting and adding some curve. That's all generic, right? But knowing an exact pose, like turn this like this, and that's not going to work for everybody. That's why I never, this is what they call a hot take. I'm never for the idea, and you'll see people recommend this all the time on their top 10 things to do list. People ripping poses out of like magazines and bringing them in. That is one of the worst things that you could possibly do, because if that person does not have the same body as the person in the photo, it's not going to look that good. So you need to work the pose based on the person that's there. That's not saying you shouldn't look at things, but you want to have an idea of what might work for different body types, of what's going to happen there, and keeping the thing as neutral as possible. I'm relatively close. We're set at about 35 millimeter. When you start stretching your lens super long or using really wide angle lenses, that's also going to affect the shot. So we want to consider a normal-ish distance from somebody is going to be ideal for getting your posing skills down until you kind of have mastered that stuff, because we don't want to distort the body when we're first starting. We want to kind of learn what works before we start doing that kind of stuff. This is really pretty light, actually. Dado light. Dado.
He did it again.
Dado did it again, exactly. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Did I answer that question about the lighting? Vanessa Joy, woohoo!
Vanessa.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is top secret, but I'm gonna say anyways. I am in a video with Vanessa for her channel, yep. We shot with well, I can't say, I don't think, an old-fashioned camera for her shooting with old-fashioned cameras videos.
You heard it here first.
And it was pretty awesome. We went to Asbury Park, which is very cool. Home of, well, maybe not home of, but place of Bruce Springsteen.
Who was the model?
Well, I can't say. Not you.
Oh, clearly.
It was not Sharina. Next time we will bring you down to Asbury Park because it was very, very fun down there. Although it was a little bit cold, but the food was very good. I had sushi, which isn't exactly what you normally would think about having at Asbury Park. No.
Not at all.
No. No, I was like, oh, I'll have this little sushi roll, and Vanessa had this giant like plate. It looked so good. I was like, how can you do that and still be?
What about posing while sitting down?
Oh, yes.
That's always hard for me.
Okay, let's do a sitting down pose.
Yeah.
Dun da da da. This is advanced. Should we sit in this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good
It's always important to ask them where they want to sit.
one. What chair they like to use. Okay.
Okay, so what we want to figure out when somebody's going to sit down is part of like what chair we want to put them in so it's comfortable, but also you know, how tall it is because it's going to be relevant to what she's wearing, right? And what she did first was much better. You were watching, right? What you want to do when you're sitting down generally is put just your butt, yeah, exactly. You just want the edge, so you never really get to sit. See, they always think they're going to be able to sit down. You're like, hey, we're going to sit down. They're like, oh, good, I can sit down. No, you're not really. You're just going to put yourself on the chair a little bit, right? This will then allow you to stretch. Because remember that when you sit down, it's going to flatten out everything. So all that muscle tone, all the angles that we want are going to be flattened basically when we sit down. So we want to keep some tension when you're sitting. So like a sitting pose like that is pretty decent. So it's not that much different basically than standing. We'll do one where you're actually sitting though in a second, but that would be the first place I would start because that's going to allow us to, I'm going to show some more body here, to basically do the same thing, right? She is a little more flat to us than normal, but that works for Sharina and for this dress, right? For some people, you might want more angle. It really kind of depends. And I put the chair down flat purposely because I knew that would be fine for her. If we were to turn the chair, let's jump up for a second. So you always want to put the chair down. That's the important part. If we turn the chair, then by its nature, she'll sit that way, right? Because that's how people will sit when you put the chair down. And now we've got more sideways. But because of the dress, oh, I'm doing this finger thing, which is bad. But because of the dress, I'm gonna get a laser pointer. But you see, because of the way this is cropped in the dress, you see all that. I'm gonna do it. I'm doing it. Do you ever see that? Kids in the hall? I'm crushing your head. I'm crushing your head. All right, sorry. All right, I'm gonna stop because that's getting better. You see the dress is hanging down, which is creating a really weird shape, right? It's all this excess. So unless I'm gonna show her all the ways to her feet, this is not ideal. So even though I said before not to put her flat, in this circumstance, we had to change it. That's why there's no guaranteed way to do it, right? We want her so that we, remember that the edge of the frame and the edge of the subject is really important. That's gonna dictate in people's minds where they begin and where they start. Now you can turn slightly, like leave your left leg in place. Yeah, exactly, that's it, right? And we can see now we have a similar thing, but how nice that shape is because the light's kind of coming in at her waist and showing us where she starts and ends. So that's basically it, right? Now, if you want to actually sit on the thing, like back, that's a little trickier, especially in a dress, but we could do, here we might turn you sideways, because if you notice, yeah, so jump up and sit perfectly sideways. Yeah. Okay, so again, we've got this kind of, everything's being flattened, right? So what we need to do is put, oh, it's already up. Okay, so we can't really do that. We need to raise one leg in order to create, I mean, if just for the show of the video, maybe just, yeah, exactly, boom, right? Now, what does that do? That tightens up the muscle in her right leg, which is now kind of making it cleaner for us to, let me bring the light around so you can see it better. I'm gonna turn off the little numbers at the bottom for a second so that we can see the whole frame, because I think we can do that, right? How do we? Nope, not that, nope. It's fine, okay. So I'll just go wider so we can see more of her. So we can see that this muscle in her right leg is.
What you did?
You just did this.
I know, we did do it before. I have no idea what I did wrong.
Every time you touch something.
Turns to gold. turns to gold.
This is why I'm not allowed to touch the camera normally. I just put it on the, so you can see now the difference, right? With her leg up like this, we've got muscle, right? Here we've got her leg is flattened down, which is gonna, you know, no matter how in shape you are, that's not going to look good, it's gonna look flat. So by bringing this leg up, now we're creating this angle. The angle is gonna show the musculature of her leg, and it looks much better. And because we can see all that, even though the dress is hanging down, it doesn't look like there's just nothing down there. We can see her shape, and that's a much better pose. The only thing I might do is move her right arm slightly differently. Yeah, like that. There you go. No, don't put it. Yeah, like this is bad because she's wrapping. Just letting it hang makes more sense. Yeah, exactly. Right, and there you go. Now I am using a. I'm kind of close and using a relatively wide lens, so it's a little distorted. But let me just do something, just so you guys can see better. I'm going to back up, so we can see more proportionately. So here I'm stretching to a 50 millimeter. So we can see how nice that looks, right? We can see how nice the legs look. We can see how nice Sharina looks. I mean, you should see her in person. It's terrible. No. Why she comes back every time after I harass her, I do not know.
I like getting bullied.
She does. She likes it. All right. So yeah, there you go. Staying down, right? Oh, I'm sorry.
Do your job.
Take it up.
You have one job. All right, here we go. All right. Is there even a memory card in this thing? All right. Oh yeah, that's very nice. So we can see, guys, right? So here, you want to see, Sharon? So we can see, right? Because we dangled the arm, see how we set nice shape there, right? We don't want to, you know, because you might think that like putting your arm on it is going to show it better, but then it almost looks too like a, here, I'm going to fall out of the chair. You know, this way you look dangly and nice.
Dangly and nice.
Yep. Apparently there's 166 pictures on this memory card, but I cannot tell you what they are.
Uh-oh.
And we're not going to check.
Not
Questions?
live on camera. No.
They could be next to anything. Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
What if someone is a little bit older?
Okay, so if somebody's a little bit more chubby in the waist, or they have some weight.
That was me before, so you know.
Right, what we want to do is minimize that by having them turn more to this. Remember how we turned them to the side at first? I mean, I would say don't have them sit down. I mean, that sounds like mean, but that's not the ideal pose for somebody who's a little bit more, you know, heavy. They're going to look better standing up because the weight is going to fall down, right? If you're sitting, it's going to, believe me, every night when I sit down and watch TV, I feel, but you know, what we want to do is the bigger somebody is, the more likely you're going to want to turn them like, so Sharina needs like a little bit of a turn, you know, to really accent, and that's because she has, you know, nice, beautiful hips. Is that something I could say on Adorama? Does that sound?
You can, that's very
I just said it, there we go. But if you're like a little bit more heavyweight, you're going to want to turn more sideways, like almost completely, right? And then twist back with the shoulders. And then what we can do is you do what I used to call the bunny rabbit, right? You do this little thing with your hands. There you go. And now the hands are covering it, right? And you can drop them down a little bit more. I mean, you don't need to, obviously, but the bigger they are, you kind of drop the hands down. That's going to help cover up any issues there. The other thing we can do is if we're lighting them, we can bring our light up higher, which will make the bottom half of their body a little darker, which will draw the eye away from it, right? So this is like, we're going to chop the top of your head, but let me just go like this. We don't want to cut off the top of anybody's head. Nobody does that. All right, so turn your shoulders more towards me. Okay, a little bit less. There we go. Perfect. Bring the hands up a little bit. Bam. Right. Something like that will help cover up, you know, any kind of imperfection if they're a little bit on the heavier side. You want to cover that up. What you don't want to do is completely like cover it, like get rid of it in shadow or put it at the edge of the frame. Because if you can't see where somebody starts or ends, they're going to look bigger by nature. So we want to, you know, show them their whole body. You just want to kind of place them in a way that's going to be the most flattering. Thinking about how lenses and stuff work, right? If we put something sideways to us, we can, and actually if I use a longer lens as well, we'll do this too, right? If I back up, even more so, that's going to work because turn a little more to the side from me. Yeah. So we can see, and then turn your shoulders towards me. There we go. And we can see that, how that worked even better. Like, see how much more slim that is, even compared to where it was before. And that's because,
wow.
Yeah, that's because remember the compression of the image, right? So if something's closer to the lens, when you're using a wider lens, it's going to stretch, right? Where this is pushing the body tighter, right? Should she turn her body away from the light? No. Okay, we could do that. Yeah, I mean, you could turn the body away from the light, sure. I mean,
you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, with this kind of light, which is big and soft, you could certainly move in different directions. The reason why I wouldn't necessarily turn her body away from the light is because I want to showcase, now swing your shoulders back around. Yeah, you can do that as well. Also works. Both ways work. Typically, working somebody into the light is going to be more flattering on their face and stuff. If you're really twisting them a lot, then you can get enough flattering light on their face. But if you're only twisting them a little bit and they're turned away from the light, then they're going to be, dark on one side of their face, which we don't necessarily want. That's why I have her that way. So you got to consider their face too, not just their body, right? But we could do it either way. What's that?
What are short lighting for a fuller figure?
Short lighting for a fuller figure. Sure, you could do that. So short lighting is when the light is more or less behind the which I did earlier. We can do it with we can do it.
You did it before, didn't
I did it at the beginning, yeah. Yeah. You can definitely move short. You can do it. I mean, the thing is that if you're going to short light somebody, so meaning the light from the back, like basically the way this hard light is right now, so turn towards that light if you don't mind, and throw your, no, you're good. No, you're good there. Okay. Just move your hair so I can see your face better, if you don't mind. So this is fine, except that what's going to end up happening is you're going to very much see the edge of the body. So if somebody is a little bit bigger and their stomach is projecting forward, you're going to really see that. It's going to be highlighted by the short light. So it's probably not ideal. It's not the worst thing in the world you could do. I mean, you certainly could do it, but you'd probably want to keep them a little more flat to you. So yeah, so turn your body a little bit more flat. Yeah, okay, there we go. Boop. Yeah, so if we do that and then we just turn your shoulders away from me, but yeah, there we go. And then keep your hips there. You can see that like this is not ideal because in both cases it's going to show exactly, I mean, that's definitely not flattering.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah, and this is going to show exactly, I mean, you're nice and slim, so it doesn't matter, but if they wanted to cover up their stomach, that's not really going to work for you. I mean, I think you're better off working into the light because what that does is it shows, again, the front of them, which they can cover more easily with their hands or something or a pose, and then you let the back of them fall off into shadow and you've got a nicer shot. Typically. Obviously, every subject's different, so it doesn't hurt for you to kind of just try different things. And typically, when I'm photographing somebody new for the first time, I will actually even say to them, listen, the first handful of shots, we're not looking for a good shot. We just want to kind of see how the light falls on you. Let me just try some different things. And I will literally be like, turn that way, take a shot, turn that way, take a shot. And then I'll look at a few and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I see what's working here. And then we'll move forward from there. So don't be afraid to do that. I mean, obviously, if you're doing like an event and you could have one frame you can shoot of somebody, then do it the safest way. But if you have a portrait, don't feel rushed. I think that people sometimes feel like under pressure because it's like, oh my God, if I take one bad picture, my whole career is over. But it's like you need to work with everybody. You're not going to immediately get a perfect shot of each person that sits in front of you the first time they're in front of you, and trying to force it with some kind of preconceived pose in your head is not going to get you a shot that really feels real. You're going to get the same shot that everybody else who read that same pose book is doing. And ultimately, you want your own style. You want to create a connection with the subject. You want to create stuff. And plus, if they already know, like that's really pretty, if they already know, the general gist of it, like I said, you can work with them and you can communicate and you can have a conversation and have fun and laugh and stuff, and they're still going to fall within the right poses and they won't feel like, oh no, hold on, my nose has to be this way and I got to do, nobody wants to feel that pressure when they're getting their pictures taken, right? Am I purposely cropping the knees? The crop is here because, again, we're shooting a video on posing and this is the best way that we can do it to show you through the camera. I mean, I could go really far back as well if you want. It's totally fine. I'm not particularly cropping this to create any kind of particular shot. So no, I'm not cropping the knees for any particular reason. Though that whole idea that you can't crop people at the knees it really depends on the framing. Like I would not say no to cropping people at the knees. But you can get her head to toe if you'd like. Like there you go. We'll make her smaller. Now you're nice and small. And we can do the same thing. Again, this is really set up to show you through the lens what we're getting here. We're not trying to achieve, if I was trying to achieve a perfect photo, I'd be shooting vertical and I'd also be tethered. We're basically just kind of setting up to create something nice so you guys can see how things work together. But there's more of our body there,
You gotta get the shoes.
I did not get the shoes, unfortunately.
They match.
The shoes are really nice, but I don't have them. Did you want the shoes? I'll get the shoes. All right, we're gonna get the shoes. I'm really far back now. There's what? I'm sorry, I can't hear you because this is a 5-foot octa. Yeah, this is a 5-foot octagon. Yeah, do like a. There we go. Right. Sorry, had to. Right. Don't ever do this pose unless you're trying to You like emulate some kind of old cheesecake, you know.
Cheesecake?
Yeah, look, with the kiss and everything, come on.
I mean, it's like, I'm ready for Mrs. Maisel.
Okay, so that's good. If we're going to do that, though, so do that again. Let me see, sideways. So yeah, exactly. A little bit less angle, and yeah, there we go. Boom. So if you're going to do it, you got to do it, right? There we go. That's much nicer.
That's how it should be?
That's how much nicer.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah. See, a little bit more flat to the camera. I mean, turn to the camera with her body just works better for her particular body position. Like I said, like if you look at some cheesecake, I'll stop saying cheesecake.
Why are you saying cheesecake? It's making me really hungry.
Cheesecake is delicious. That's what they used to call like the 1920s and 30s.
It's called cheesecake?
Yeah, that kind of glamour, that yeah, right? Cheesecake. Am I dating myself by saying cheesecake? Okay, sorry. Yeah, that's that cutesy, glamoury stuff was called cheesecake. Can't be. There we go.
Cheesecake.
Yeah, it's called cheesecake because cheesecake is delicious. All right, so.
Bring it back. You can do it.
What's that you want me to do?
Bring it back, cheesecake.
Bring it back. Bring back the cheesecake. I mean, I do like cheesecake. Now I'm getting hungry. Okay, questions, thoughts, concerns? No, not really. This is really simple. I mean, I feel like this subject is one that you can best learn by doing, like most things in photography. There's a lot to it. I think if you're studying poses, you want to consider, like, look at the subject in the pose. Not just the pose itself. Don't look at a picture and be like, oh, that's a really good pose, I'm going to use it. You want to look at the picture and say, that's a good pose for that body type in that situation. And then if you want to collect a series of them and you have something that's similar and you're like, oh, this would be good for Sharina, you can pull it out of your hat, right? But ultimately, people are going to feel more comfortable and you're going to get the best shots if you just look at them. I know it's weird, right? And communicate with your subject and basically look and see what is it about them that you want to showcase. Maybe what is it about them that you want to not showcase as much because they're maybe not as happy with. And then we're going to adjust the body and the light so that we're highlighting the positive and minimizing the negative. There's no negative to Sharina because she is perfect. See, I'm being super nice to her on the air so she can't say I'm mean because she always says I'm...
This is not real.
This way, you see it here. I am super nice, so whenever she tells you that I'm mean, we know. Right, but that's basically it, right? It's nice and simple. Now, if we're talking about more... because I wanted to do more full length because that's what everybody always asks about. But let me just, because we're here and because it's, okay, we got a couple minutes. I just want to come in and just go do a little bit of a closer shot for you guys. Just to, let's talk about posing like a closer shot. Okay. All right. So number one, we want to chop the top of the head off. That's always important. All right, I'll even leave the top of the head in for everybody that loves that. Okay, let's kill this light in the back. I know, but for these people, they like it.
Why do you do it?
They love the top of their head.
But why do you cut it?
Because I have a problem because I'm balding and I don't want anybody to ever see the top of my head. So.
That's not true. You got great hair. But
Okay.
why do you do it? Because you want to focus on the face.
That's right.
Ah.
Sharina knows. Okay. All right. So if we're posing somebody more of a head and shoulder portrait, right? And again, I'm shooting horizontally. What we want to do is we want to think similarly, right? We don't want them to be dead flat to the camera because that'll just kind of be wide and boring. We want to create some shape, so we're going to have her at a slight angle. And we can do, depending on our lighting, we can do any number of things. We could do the shoulders back. Here's where you might do things which kind of can sometimes look a little cheesy in a further away shot, is this is where you can really do things like put your hands on your hips, right? Like it's not that you can never put your hands on your hips in a full length shot, but that can look a little bit like, hey, what do you mean? So, but in a closer shot, like go ahead and put your hand on your hip, like do this. You see how that's nice, right? It's creating an angle, right? And then we can turn the shoulder slightly this way, a little bit less, right there. We can bring the chin out like a chicken, and down right there, boom. And then we've got, a nice, simple pose for a closer shot, right? It's a little bit different. It's not the same pose I would do if she was full length because I don't want her like this, full length because it looks a little bit like aggressive, right? But in this pose, it gives her that separation, especially because this outfit has those sleeves where when they're close to her body, it's creating that dead space. We want that like space in between to show where she begins and ends essentially. And here we can do the short or the short lighting. Let me, because somebody had asked about symmetrical or being dead center. Again, with a female subject, I tend to put the light more in the front. But even with that, right? We can see how much flatter it is. Now we can actually get away with her being flatter to us because the shadow's coming this way, right? And we can even do let's do the fashion thing like this. We can even do that, right? And then bring your chin up a tiny bit, And then this looks a little bit more kind of, the dress is a little funky in the back, but you can see it right there. We can see that because of this angle, how that looks weird. So we want to fix that. That's where a stylist comes in.
Oh.
Yeah. So let's try that again. We'll see if we can get it with the dress better. Yeah. No, be more.
This one?
Oh yeah. Well, that's the Vogue pose, right? You can do this.
Oh.
Yeah. That doesn't never look good. Nope. And then twist towards me. More. Yeah. There we go. So now we can do this and then bring that shoulder up. Remember, we want to keep that on your hip.
Oh.
Yeah. And then twist this way. Good, right there. So now we're similar to the beginning. The only problem with this pose is that we can't see her other arm, which can sometimes be weird. So there we go, exactly. And and then this way we've got, right? We can see. I'm not loving that sleeve though. I feel like if you had your do the first thing that you did where you were like this.
Like this?
Yep.
Great.
This is the great thing about digital cameras is we can show. Yeah, they can see this, right? Okay, good. Go ahead.
What about shooting? What about shooting props, and what about men versus women?
Okay, props. Props are fun. I don't know what. Yes, I don't know. It depends on what the prop is, right? There's no certain rule to it. If it's a hat, they could have it on their head, or they could do that. Let people play with things. Is that what they mean by what we use most? What's that?
Depends if there's a narrative.
Yeah, exactly. A prop should, if you're making a portrait of somebody, what they're wearing, ideally, but also any prop that you introduce should mean something. If you're just handing people random props, that's fine for loosening them up, but really, what point does that have? And you may have a point. When I ask that question, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying if that's a fun thing that you're doing, give it a point. You're giving them a clown nose, well, there's a reason why you're giving them a clown nose, right? So how you have them use it will depend on why you're giving it to them. So that's what I say about props. Men, exact same thing that I just said. It's all the same thing. Look at angles, work them towards the light, try to show their whole body. You want to show where they start and end. So again, float the arms. It's all exactly the same. There's no different thing, except for they're probably going to be maybe dressed differently, right? They're probably not going to wear that dress. They might, who knows, right? Or they might wear a suit. They might wear, but you could have two people dressed, whether they're male or female, dressed exactly the same. And if so, then you could pose them the same. Gender doesn't advise how you pose things. It does, there is a certain idea that like more kind of harsh light or more like shadowy light tends to be more masculine. So if we're lighting with more shadows on a male figure, let's say, then we're going to want to make sure that we're aware of that. We're not going to want to lose things in shadow so we lose their shape. But assuming you're lighting them the same, then the pose is really whatever's comfortable for them that makes their body look its best, which is going to generally be angles, slight angles, and shaping them with the light. Right, if that made any sense, right? Yeah. There's no defined. And again, if you're buying this pose book of like dude poses, okay, so is everybody else, Yeah,
There's a dude's poses.
Well, a dude pose is like.
No, but there is cookie cutter stuff that everyone produces.
Yeah, like.
Oh gosh.
Instead of like actually doing a portrait.
Right, like that. Yeah. Dude poses like this, like.
Oh yeah.
Right, that's a dude pose,
Remember waiting, hold the tie, done.
Right. Try to find stuff. My goal is always to, with these lessons or classes or workshops, whatever you want to call them, is to give you an idea so that you can grow and create your own style. If you're just copying what you see, that's fine for learning something. What you want to do is look at your subject in front of you and produce something for them that not everybody else is going to do. And if you do the cookie cutter, standard pose book stuff, you're going to do the same shot everybody else is doing. That's not how you achieve, notoriety as a photographer. You want your stuff to stick out. There's a million headshot photographers in New York City all shooting the same thing, but the ones that make the good money are the ones that bring something special from their clients. It doesn't have to do with any particular one kind of lighting or whatever. It's something to do with them observing and understanding their clients and giving them what they need. So that's really the way we look at it. The same is true with fashion or anything else that you're doing, right? You want to look at what works, but you want to base it on an idea, not a very specific thing. Not a very specific pose, but the idea of a pose. I'm very philosophical today.
I know. I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Amazed.
See, amazed. Yeah, it's psychological, right. It comes down to, if somebody is just posed in a generic way, if you pose me like this with my tie, I will never look at that picture and say, yeah, that's me. And nobody will look at that picture and say, yeah, that's Daniel. Because that's not me, right? What's going to be me as opposed to it's unique to me. And I'm only going to find that by exploring with the person on this journey together, using certain, you know, techniques that we understand, which is like showcasing the body, making sure the light's falling on them in a flattering way. That's going to achieve a pose that is special and unique to that person. And that's what we ultimately want. Anything else? Are you crying? No. Okay, good. All right, I'm getting really emotional about posing today. Okay, so yeah, we're back in a couple of weeks with. I don't know with this camera. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with. With. I don't know what's going on. I either made it much better or much worse. It's hard to say. I'm trying to bounce it off the card. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks with the next one, and it will be super fun. Comment below if you're watching this after the fact or not. Like it and all the other good things. Sharina, Sherry Allen, check her out.
Hit that like button.
Hit that like button. Share.
Sure.
I watched this one YouTube channel, and the woman that does it she says, email this to your grandmother. That's the best sign off. I want a good one like that. That is the best sign off ever.
Email this to your grandmother.
Email this to your. I love it. It's the best sign off ever. Yeah. So, anyways, I need a good one like that. So, if you guys can think of a good sign off, because I have the worst dismount, let me know in the comments below. Daniel needs a good dismount. I do have the worst. Thank you.
No, you don't.
You got her IG and everything?
Yeah.
I said Sherry Allen.